All right. Welcome to the Governance Committee for the San Juan County Charter Review Commission. Today is Monday, March 4th, and this meeting's from 7 to 8 p.m. Let's go ahead and take some roll call. Olivia, are you here?
Dave?
Yes, sir.
It's Thursday.
Right. Thank you. Constructive feedback. I need it.
Just for the recording.
Yes. Okay.
A clarification, Dick. It's actually Groundhog Day. Sorry. Okay.
Really?
Oh,
No.
Oh.
Every day's Groundhog Day, you
right.
guys.
True.
right. True. So Monday, no, it's March. See, I have dyslexia. March Monday. So it's March 4th, Thursday in the evening, and we're about to have a great meeting. Let's do some roll call. Olivia, are you here?
Here.
Richard Grout.
Here.
Janet Brunell.
I am here.
David Dellendorf.
Here.
Tony Gazelle. Oops.
You're muted, Tony.
You can wave. You're muted, but you can wave. That's good.
Present.
Great. Thank you. And Jane Fuller.
Here.
Yeah. And Sharon Grout. Sharon Abreu. We let's make sure that works, that you can be on the committee. It is a big number, and there was concern that 8 would be a what is it? It is a negative. What's the term? It's a majority.
Quorum. Nine is the number that you're looking
Yeah.
for.
Right. 8 is okay.
So we're okay.
8 is okay.
8 is okay. Okay. So welcome. We're glad that you're here, and we look forward to your input. On that, I'm sorry I didn't get to the agenda, and but one thing I was going to ask, I try to open the meeting a little bit with a little light, get to know each other a little bit. What is your favorite color? I'm curious everybody's favorite color. So my screen, Olivia, do you want to share your favorite color with us?
Green.
It's appropriate. Richard, how about you?
Muted.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Sky blue.
Sky blue. Nice. It's fun. Janet?
Red.
Red. David?
Purple.
Purple. Tony?
Blue.
Blue. And Jane?
This is why I like David so much. I'm purple.
Purple. Yeah. I like it. Sharon, what's your favorite color?
It changes from day to day, but today is dusty rose.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah. Mine's red. I'm a painter and I paint a lot of red. So yeah, right on, Janet. So let's move on. The minutes, I sent them out earlier today. They're very limited. And if you got a chance to read them, or if there's any comments about them, I'm happy to take those, and then we can either make additions or deletions, or what you think. Is there any comments about the minutes? David?
I didn't see anything in the minutes about what we actually talked about. Is that maybe you sent out another version, but I didn't see any detail.
What I put that we talked in general about how we're gonna go forward in terms of selecting the issues. What did you feel like we missed out that's not in the minutes?
Well, I'd have to pull it up again, and I'm not going to do that right now. I'm fine with them. I'll try to be a little more detailed, but not as much as Sharon Abreu was the other day. Okay. Sharon. So yeah, no, I'm fine with the minutes.
Okay. Well, we got the absolutely most important thing in the minutes, and that's that we elected you as the minute taker. So that's what was the most important. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes. Anybody?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Thank you. So tonight I would like us to I'd like to hear really dig in and figure out what we want to do with these issues. I'd like to hear if you have presented issues in the list of ideas that we're supposed to look at, I'd like you to present kind of a sense of what you're looking at, what you'd like to see us do with that issue. And I'd like to end up with a little more firm idea of what we're going to go forward with, and maybe a chronological timeline of when we want to focus on these things. Because some of these things, they might not be really drastic what the county needs to address, but it might be something good in the charter to have. So I just want to hear as much, I hope we can all enjoy as much feedback and ideas and just have an open exchange here. So let's get to the list of ideas. Does that work for everybody? Okay, cool. Do you have, oh, I have a quick question. Do you all have printers? Does everybody have a printer at their, you can print out and so it's easy to look thing? Okay. So did you by chance get a look at the it's the sheet that I sent out last week that had the branches, that had branches, islands, and kind of a breakdown of the issues that I kind of pulled them into? Did you get a chance to look at that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and start at the top of that and look at some of the ideas. Start off with branches. And Tony, you have quite a few of the suggestions here in terms of the relationship of the manager to the other positions, what's the link between council and the manager position? What are you thinking in terms of what should we address?
Well, I think we need to have an idea of if the charter will have in it that there's actually a separation of governance and executive. And I have a meeting with Mike Thomas tomorrow it's not a meeting that's approved by this committee. It's more of me just personally trying to understand how the current position functions with the current council, so that I can report back to this committee on what I think. I could be completely wrong on how things are. Let's put it that way, because I don't know. So part of my meeting with Mike Thomas tomorrow is that to understand how is that relationship, because if you look at the charter, it is not clear to me that there's actually a separation of powers between the executive and the council. It seems to me like the council has a lot of has tentacles throughout the county and different departments, and I don't think, as my own person, I'm not telling you guys what to think, but I'm my own person. It seems to me that there has to be a firewall between the council's responsibilities and what the executive branch does, because the executive branch, which is Mike Thomas, is responsible to the county council, and that is their own their sole employee. So, having said all that, I don't know what the answer is. I just want to review a lot of these sections that pertain to council manager relationships. And I don't have a preconceived notion. All I want to know is that learn what's going on and then see if there's something that needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah, David?
I'm not sure I understand completely your concern, Tony. I mean, the council has both legislative and executive powers, and it does appoint the county manager. So isn't the county manager responsible reporting to the council for all of its activities other than those of the electeds? And so you talked about the tentacles going out. My understanding is, and I think it's in the charter, that the council members are supposed to act through the county manager. They're not supposed to micromanage and go around the county manager to talk to somebody in community planning, for example. That it has to all go through the county manager. So I'm not sure I see your concern. Could you be a little more specific, maybe on the sections that are confusing to you, or create this?
Yeah, I listed the sections that are of concern, but here's an example. section 242, it talks about interactions with county employees.
Yeah, okay.
And it all, in that section, I proposed to this committee, that we should strike that section completely out and replace it with what the language that I recommended, which is basically saying that all county actions that are in the different departments that are not elected departments should be under the purview of the county manager, executive, whatever the terminology is currently. And the county council dictates or directs the county manager via county council decisions that are determined at the council meetings. So that becomes the working marching orders, if you will, to the county manager. So section 242 is a good example of what I'm talking about. And there are similar sections in the charter that seems to me that they're confusing a person like myself. What are the separation of powers, for the lack of a better phrase? And I did
Well,
list the
242, at least with regard to personnel issues, does seem to separate the powers here. It says the council can't do this, that, or the other, but this is with regard to discipline or threats to discipline, et cetera, et cetera. What are the other, in terms of, the day-to-day management, where is that lacking in here?
That's a big question. Let's move on. We have not move on. We have some questions for Tony, and let's make sure we look to be recognized before we ask a question. Richard, you had a question?
Well, yeah, I mean, my view is, Tony, you're being a little strict. I think the normal relationship with manager and elected body is the council, commission, whatever it is, has legislative, policy, and budgetary authority. And the real distinction that needs to be maintained between the executive and the elected body is the elected body is not supposed to be messing in the administration of the departments. So, and we've had a lot of that under not the most recent former council, but the one before that, of a lot of messing in the departments and interfering. And that's something that shouldn't happen in a good professional organization. And that's the kind of thing, if we're going to clarify something, that's the sort of thing I would favor clarifying.
Is there a question there for me? I'm sorry, Dick.
No, I didn't say I had a question. No, that was Dave.
Sorry, Olivia, did you had your hand up?
Yeah, so the operations committee that I'm also on, they're also discussing section 2.42 in regards to it adding additional anti-bullying information in there as well. So if you are drafting something, Tony, to be more all-encompassing, I would let you know that we are also focusing on that same section. So it might be something where, hey, if multiple committees are looking at this, then maybe this is a section that really does need a full overhaul.
Tony, or I'm sorry, Janet.
I was just going to say, it sounds like Tony's going to have a conversation tomorrow with Mike. Why don't we let him have a conversation with him to see about what, Mike feels like there needs to be clarity in the charter review from his point of view, and then maybe Tony can report back and we can move on to the next piece of information.
Okay, great.
Oh, Jane's got a question.
Oh, Jane, there. Hi. Yes, Jane.
Hi. Not a question, just a further comment based on what our elections committee discussed this afternoon in terms of the content of a couple of sections. I think it's super important. For example, in the conversation, say that Tony's going to be having tomorrow with Mike, but also for all of us as we're looking at these sections of the charter, to really look at the wording of the various sections and make sure that the wording does or does not reflect what we're sort of picking at in terms of a possible revision. And so, just to the point of what Olivia was just saying about the operations committee looking at, including anti-bullying language, you can look at this and see the first sentence says exhibit ethical and respectful behavior. So, so I'm just suggesting that we really look at the wording that's in the various sections, consider it carefully, and then as Tony is going to do, as all of these committees are going to do, we gather additional information from those who are actually performing these functions of government and ask, does this section work, so to speak? Anyway, that's just my suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, David.
I think it's great that Tony's going to meet with Mike Thomas. I would encourage Tony to come back next week if he so chooses with very specific changes or additions to the wording. So we have something very concrete to look at as opposed to the general concept of there's not clarity about the relationship between the county council and the county manager. Come back with specific language that you think solves the problem, so we have something concrete to chew on.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, David. But I think it might be a little bit premature because all I'm trying to do tomorrow is get a feel of what the relationship is. I think it's just a matter of me reporting to you all of what I thought was the relationship. And if I were correct in my assumptions, then fine. If not, then the whole thing could be dropped. But if I'm correct in my assumptions, then I can come back with time.
Sure.
Not next meeting, but with time to come up with some language that I think should be considered. Again, I'm not presuming anything. All I want to know is that how is that relationship tomorrow? Because I've seen some of the suggestions on the spreadsheet that deal with what the county council needs to be doing in its meetings, and I'm not sure that's really something that anyway, let me just kind of give us a chance to talk first, like Janet said, when we'll come back next week and give you an update.
Yeah. Anything else? Somebody has anything else to say? Tony, I did think your first comment in the first sentence is the relationship between the council and the manager is a bit ambiguous. I think that was pretty accurate. That was kind of an understatement in terms of my understanding of what the relationship is.
I mean, if you noticed, David, that Dave, that I've rattled off a bunch of sections that I looked at, 2.4, 2.41, 2.42, 4.10, 4.40, 4.41. All of these sections seem to be not clear for the average reader of the charter.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, at least to me. So,
is there? Mike Thomas is going to have his own perspective. Clearly, he's going to have a sense of what this relationship is. Is there anybody else we can think of talking to and getting an opinion from about how they feel the relationship is between the manager and the council and how that relates to the branches? Can we maybe, is that something we were interested in exploring and getting another opinion or other ideas about? Jane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying we need to talk to the counselors, or it was Jamie anyway, Jamie Stevens or former counselors. Yeah, I mean, their perspective should be considered equally, biased as they may be, but on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Olivia, please.
If we're unable to get our current commissioners on our call, I'm good friends with Rick Hughes and already asked him if he would be willing to share at the main meeting, and he said yes. We haven't scheduled him yet, but I'm sure that he would be willing to join our Zoom call for an hour if we asked him to.
Great. Yeah, that might be. Yeah, Richard.
And I know Bill Watson would do the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think they definitely have an insight to the relationship, and I wonder that if in terms of is there things that are in terms of language of the charter that aren't meeting the needs of this relationship that I'm having a hard time articulating that. I'll just move on because we'll is the charter set up to work in terms, especially in terms of relationship between council and line staff. It seemed like to me the language was pretty clear that the council is not supposed to interrelate with the line staff, but is that actually happening? I think some commissioners had an issue with that. Is that really happening? And is the language or the structure of it set up that that is actually a reality, regardless of what's in the charter? Tony, please.
Just get back to what David asked. If you look at section 441, that to me it basically says that the council has the prerogative to allow the county manager to manage his people or her people. And that, to me, it just that's part of the ambiguity that I was referring to earlier. So I think, and I don't want to belabor this and beat the dead horse, but I think let me just listen to what Mike Thomas has to say. I'll have a couple questions to ask, and then I'll come back to you next week. And I'm sorry I've taken too much of our time, but I will come back next week with some kind of suggestions.
Okay,
that's all I have.
Okay. Marine C has suggested we look at the strengths and weaknesses of council itself, and that might be something that, again, with Rick Hughes and Bill Watson could come and speak to us about, and they'd have some insight about that. But also, is there anybody else who we can think of that might be able to come and give us some insight of how they feel council is doing? Is this something we want to look at too? Tony?
One of the current members, the new members for sure, to see what, they've been there for 2 months. They kind of had their toes wet a little bit. Maybe they can come in and ask and tell us, is it working as they've expected it to work? That'll be I think it'll be a good input. And
okay.
any either Cindy or
Christy. Yeah. Okay. Okay. In terms of branches, are there other issues that we really want to look at? I mean, in terms of we're interested in really focusing on? Janet.
So Dave, are we just going to go through the list here? I mean, I thought we were just going to go through lists. Like the next thing is, should the county manager be required to have a deputy?
Okay. Yeah, let's just do that.
Please.
Please. Should the county manager be required to have a deputy? Richard, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think the job is clearly too big for one person, and I don't know why. I heard recently, and maybe Kevin said it the other night, or maybe in a private conversation, I don't remember, that he actually is preparing to hire a deputy. But I have felt for quite some time that there shouldn't be discretion there. It should be like the elected officials who are required to have a deputy, because the job is too big, and he oversees all these small departments like IT and human resources and things. And there's 6 or 7 of them on top of everything else he's supposed to do. And it's too much. And there are a lot of those duties, like overseeing those small departments, that a deputy could perform and relieve him of. So I think, I'm not sure how strong the language we should make it, but I think, yeah, that position should have a deputy. And it shouldn't just sit there vacant.
David, please.
Yeah, I don't agree with Dick on this. I think if the county manager feels like he's overworked, understaffed, that he needs to present a case for hiring a deputy manager to the county council, and it would go through a probably go through the budget process. I mean, there would have to be an analysis of how much it's going to cost and how it's going to be paid for, justify it, etc. And I don't think we should be doing that. I think we'd be micromanaging how the county carries out its administrative functions, when I don't think that's really our job to do that.
Richard?
It's already in his budget.
Well, then he can hire a person if he wants to. I mean, that's fine. It's in his budget. Then we're partway there.
Yeah. Let's talk to Janet.
So I just want to go back to something that Ron Sims, and I don't remember Mac's last name, said. There were two parts to when they were looking at the charter. There were things that they thought were amendments, and they thought they were recommendations. I think if we're looking at things that could be a recommendation to the current county council and say, looking at the current, burden for the county manager, we are recommending that you explore looking at a deputy manager. I'm not sure this is something we put in the charter that burdens for the next 10 years the county council with a position that may or may not work for whoever the county manager. So I think when we look at these things, look at, is this a charter thing, amendment, or is this a recommendation we want to make to council, and create kind of that list?
Okay. Okay. Tony.
In our previous committee that we met, we have something like that, Janet, that we have one or two recommendations to the Charter Review Commission that we would present. We did not feel that these were actual charter amendments. They were more like, this is what we feel should happen, and we're going to present them. So I agree with you. That's what we should be considering.
Okay. In terms of, let's do that in terms of going forward. Let's state if you think this could be an amendment to go up to the commission, or just something we'd want to recommend. And just
Olivia had her hand
I'm
up.
sorry.
Sorry, Dave.
Olivia?
Olivia's had her hand up for a little.
Oh.
To just reiterate, Mike Thomas will also be at our next commissioners meeting. And so this could be something to reiterate and talk to him about. He does have an admin that works with him full time. So he's, not completely understaffed. He does have some people there, but I agree with David that, it could be kind of more of a micromanaging thing. So maybe we should specifically bring this up with him. I also really like the idea of making sure we keep track of which items we are going to try and, edit within the charter, and then recommendations. If we're going to move forward with that, I think we should take a pause before we go any further to figure out how we're going to keep track of that data, because we have a very large list for our group.
Okay. David?
I would like to make a motion that we do make this a recommendation, and specifically not a proposed charter amendment, and that we put this to bed and move on, because I think we've got a lot of other more important potential amendments on our list here that we're going to have to deal with. It'd be nice to put some of these items to bed tonight if we can.
Richard?
And I can support that.
Okay. Janet? Okay, got it. Janet. Okay.
Do you need a second?
Yeah. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of making this a recommendation that we will work on to develop later? Okay.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Aye.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay. Okay. Should we go back just one to see the last issue we talked about with Tony? Is that something we might want to look at as an amendment? Can we make a decision about that? If that's something we want to look at as wouldn't be a recommendation, but a amendment, or is that something we want to look at? David?
I think it's too early until we have
Yeah.
something specific.
Did you even look at
Totally.
it?
That's what I was going
Agreed.
to say. It's
Okay.
too early.
Agreed.
So we're just
And
going to cut off
Yeah.
the fruit. Okay. Okay, should the auditor, I'll move on now. Should the auditor and treasurer's departments be consolidated? Would it be more cost effective to have one CFO deputy and then two departments, Marine and Marine C and Kyle Davies? This was one of the, okay, Janet?
Isn't some other committee looking at this? I
Yeah.
felt like Maureen's committee was actually looking at, so this is something we can take off our plate and let them run with this.
Yes, she called me and said she would like to work with us on this. She was kind of bewildered that it was on our committee and not hers. We can just pass on it and say that it should be to another committee, or we can actually look at it. Is there any other opinions about this? Richard?
We have it in the electeds and appointeds, which is one of my other committees. And frankly, I think that's a good place for it. But if we want to discuss it here as well, I have no problem with
I say you can have it, Dick. Just take
that.
Okay, is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of moving this, just leaving this for the electeds and appointeds committee versus appointeds committee?
Aye.
Okay, direct there.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Should the county manager, not the auditor, prepare the budget? The manager currently oversees 60% of the budget, and we have had auditors though not currently, who have had little understanding of the non-elected departments' budgets, which tend to be the more complex ones, but they were preparing those budgets. Richard Grout, what do you think?
I was influenced by Myleen's arguments about having the person who's the lead on the budget be an independent person, but it wouldn't break my heart to see some language that's more clear that it is required to be a collaborative project between the auditor and the county manager. Apparently, according to Myleen, and I think Mike suggested the same thing, that the two of them are working well together on it, but that might not always be the case, depending on the personalities. So I think it's okay if the auditor is the lead, but I think it has to be clear that it's in collaboration with the county manager. County manager has to have a big say in that.
Jane, please.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dick. I listening to her talk on 2 occasions actually to us about the concept of this this team effort that they have. It does sound like they have to work together, and it's not just her and the county manager. There was someone else on the team at least as well, and so I agree with what Dick's saying. Yeah, I support that given her describing it on 2 occasions. I thought the collaborative effort is really important.
Janet.
So to Dick's point and to Jane's point, yes, I think we can move on. That it seems like this is not something that we need to pursue. But Dick, if you think there's to be clarification in language, do you want to take a pass at figuring out what that clarification could be to make it a little more clear in the charter that we could look at?
Sure, I'll do that.
And that is an amendment to the charter we're talking about here, or a recommendation in the kind of a memo going forward?
Well, let me take a shot at it and come back and tell you what I think after I try to come up with some language.
Okay. Great.
Dave?
About yes, Tony, please.
Just a kind of a comparison. In another taxing district, which is a school district, which is kind of similar to a kind of a microcosm of what the county government is like. There is a business person, kind of the numbers person, who is in charge of the budget, but it takes a lot of people involved in the budget process. and it includes some of the board members, in this case, the county council. So I think I was satisfied that they have a certain system that they actually work with, which is that the different departments come up with whatever numbers they want in their budget, and they talk to the county manager. The county manager is kind of the spokesman of the groups that are under his or her purview to the county council. So all of them are a team. It's not like somebody is in charge of it. It's more like it's a team, but the lead person is the financial person, and it makes sense to me that way. It does work well in other taxing districts. So I think it should also work well in a county setting. And I would be looking forward to what Dick has to come up with as far as language is concerned, because I think if it clarifies this fuzziness, then that's great. And I think that's really what I would be supporting, is to clarify the fuzziness.
Okay, great. Olivia, please.
On that, since we're talking about this, because the budget for this year cut the Charter Review Committee's budget by $3,000, and if we use our standard inflation rate, it should have been over $12,000. Please feel free to join us at the actual commissioners meeting on Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's going to be some members from the CRC that will be present to talk to the commissioners about increasing our budget, because we will be out of money and over our $7,000 budget by the last week of May, which makes it not possible for us to finish our work by June if we are going to wrap this up by June. So just a quick plug.
Thank you. Yeah. My wife and I were talking about the budget for the King County one. It was $250,000. And we went and figured out per capita of citizen, how does it compare to our budget? And it was actually about the same, about $7,000. But King County is a pretty big budget and a pretty big entity. And they also had a lot more support from staff and council than we are getting. And they were probably had some kind of a IT support. David.
Looking at my copy of the charter as amended 10 years ago, it appears that the last Charter Review Commission did modify the section on the budget, and specifically that it adds that a certain section was added by the voters on November 5, 2019. And I think it may address what everybody is talking about right now, maybe not as specifically. You give me permission to read two sentences that are this paragraph, okay?
Yeah.
The procedure, this is what the charter says. The procedures and steps for adopting a biannual budget and mid-biennium review shall conform with the procedures and steps for adopting an annual budget and with requirements established by the state auditor. The authority and procedures for biennial budgets will be consistent with RCW 36.40250 as amended. Then it says in parentheses, added by voters on November 5, 2019. So there are certain standards and procedures that are built into state law. And there may also be mention in the county manager's job description that one of his responsibilities is collaborating with the auditor in developing the budget. So I'm not sure I see a real problem here. Everybody says it's working well. I don't know if we really need to get more specific. I think if there were a lack of cooperation and the budget process was not going very well, then it's the county council who's the ultimate executive authority of the county to haul in the two combatants into the county council and read them the riot act and say, you guys get your act together. You have to put this thing together properly. So I'm not sure there's a real problem there. I think it would, they're both of their job performance reviews would be negatively impacted if they don't collaborate. I just don't see there's a big issue here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Richard?
I'm still going to look at it because keep in mind, David, the auditor is an independently elected official. The council has no control over the auditor. And in my time in county government, I had the misfortune to work with an auditor who felt that he was the budget dictator and nobody else was allowed to take part in it. It was every year, it was just this arduous, unpleasant experience. And it's, I think, unless there's language that's adequate there in the charter, it becomes personality based and you're dependent on the goodwill of people. So I'm happy to take a look at the language and see if I think we need something more and bring it back to everybody. Oh, and following Olivia's plug for the meeting, the council meeting, I will put in a plug unrelated to what we're doing. If you're concerned about vacation rentals on that same meeting as the continuation of the hearing, you might consider being there.
Okay, right. Thank you. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. Jane, yeah. Jane?
Just a quick question for, just a quick question for Olivia. So when you guys speak to the council on Tuesday, I take it you referred to section 9.22 on expenditures in the charter, eh? And you kind of took stock of it, says, shall provide reasonable funds, facilities and services appropriate to an elected. Did you guys, I imagine you've strategized around this already?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, excellent. And I'll be there for sure.
Thank you. I won't actually be able to be there because I have a new hire that I'll be training right at that same time, but I did a bunch of research for Kevin and submitted. And so I'm just trying to get other people like, hey, show that this is important, please.
It is, it's important. Let's keep going. The next one is by Maureen C. Evaluating the county council. Are the strengths and weaknesses, are they meeting the citizens' expectations? And does the county council do what they're supposed to be doing? How can we assess this and who can we who are some good people to bring perspective to this issue for us? Richard, then Olivia, then Jane.
I usually agree with Maureen, but I disagree with her on this one. I think this is so subjective. I mean, if you've got a council member who is regularly interfering with the various departments, which we've had, I think that's pretty clear. But beyond that, what does that mean? Are they meeting the citizens' expectations? Well, maybe they're meeting mine, but they're not meeting yours because maybe we disagree on what they should be doing or actions they're taking. I don't really get this one.
Okay. Olivia?
The one thing that I thought of that's kind of tied to this, because I agree with Dick, that's very subjective and just kind of, it's like how you feel about it, not necessarily facts. The only thing that I was thinking of for the charter specifically that could change where maybe they could do better is us making the recommendation that they meet on a weekly basis, especially if this is going to be something where are they going to continue to do digital meetings because the new commissioners have met from home. They have not gone into the office according to Mylene. So, we were waiting to be put on the agenda and then that's 2 weeks out. So is that sufficient enough? And I'm trying to pull which part of the charter. I pulled it the other day, but they only have to meet twice a month according to the charter. So I think it's worth evaluating if that is enough specifically, because now they are 3 and they are full-time employees, when the verbiage that's in here is when there were 6 and they were part-time, if my memory is correct.
Okay. Jane? And then Tony and then David. Sorry, Jane, please.
Yeah, just to clear, was Janet ahead of me? Because if she was,
No, ahead of me,
Okay.
sorry. Ahead of me.
Okay, were you ahead of me, Tony? Because I
No.
will defer to
No,
you.
I'm never
Okay.
ahead of you, Jan.
Jane, no, Jane right now, and then we go to Janet and Tony.
Okay,
I get in trouble.
okay, just a not when I'm running on the road anyway. Okay, quick question for Olivia. Do we know if that language about the meetings, do we know if that was changed in the last charter review? Like, is or not? Like, I'm just curious because again, I think, you know, I think it's a good point. I think COVID circumstances aside, which are rather unique, I think that kind of doesn't, maybe should not play into this. I think it's a relevant thing to consider, but certainly one we need to get the perspective of counselors, current and previous, on, because my you know, bird's eye view of what Jamie Stephen does for District 3 is that he is phenomenally busy, and so I don't know. Like I think again, it's something. It's one of those things that would be good to talk to the counselors about, and yeah. So
Olivia, can we go to Janet, Tony, and David and come back to you? Is that okay?
It was just an answer to her question, that's all.
Okay, real quick.
The section is 2.41 specifically. We were just at 2.42, so it was at 2.41, where it says that they need to meet twice monthly.
Okay. Janet.
So what I was going to say is I kind of agree with Dick that we're getting over skis on this. If they are not meeting the citizens' expectations, they're voted out of office. There's democracy. That's how citizens let people know if they're not responsive. But to the point of one meeting a week, I mean, if we were going to look at something where they're a little more responsive in terms of meetings, because the Zoom thing has become so ubiquitous, if I were going to put something in here, it'd be they have to be in council together out of COVID 2 times a month, and then digital, you know, do a digital version 2 times a month. So that's every week, but it doesn't. So for people that need to travel, it's not as onerous on them to travel each week. That said, I really think this is something that we are telling the electorate that they have no choice, that I mean, really, if they're not doing their job, they're voted out of office. So that's my feeling on this.
Okay. Now, Tony now, and then David.
I agree with Dick. This is not something that is really at top of the list, especially since there are the section that Olivia mentioned, but also if you look at section 2.42, the county council can determine its own meetings and its own operation. And if we don't like what they're doing, we can always vote them out. And then in section 241, it says at least twice monthly. At least. It doesn't mean that they're limited to 2. They can meet 3 or 4 times. So I think I have to go back and cycle back to what Dick just said earlier. This is really, if we don't like what they're doing, we can always vote them out. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
David.
Oh, thank you. David.
I had 3 things. Now I have 4. Voting them out, I don't think is the answer, Tony, because they're elected for, is it 4 years or 6 years? You know, you might have to wait 4 years to vote them out. I don't think that is a meaningful consideration. The weekly versus monthly, I mean, they are full-time employees. I don't know why they couldn't meet. Excuse me, weekly versus bi-monthly. I don't know why they couldn't meet weekly. I'm surprised. I actually thought they were meeting weekly. I think maybe they are, at least they were in normal times. So it may say one thing here, but in reality, I think they try to meet weekly. Sometimes they have 2 meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday, sometimes Monday and Tuesday. So I'm not sure there's a big problem here. I could see changing it to weekly, and I don't think there would be any pushback. I don't think they could justify pushback when it's a full-time job. I would support going to weekly. And then Dick's, the conversation that we just had about Maureen's comment, what I heard that she said was the strengths and weaknesses of the council, discussion of the strengths and weaknesses. I heard people talk about that in the context of the performance of the individual council members. I didn't interpret it that way. I interpreted it as being strengths and weaknesses of the structure of the council and its relationship with the county manager and the electeds, et cetera, et cetera. And if I'm right, well, if I'm wrong, I don't think we should be judging council members, particularly now we have 2 of them that are brand new, and I don't think that's our role. But if I'm right that it has to do with the structure of the council, then I think what Tony is going to come up with, that we talked about at the very beginning, will hopefully address those weaknesses that are determined. I'm not sure what the specific weaknesses are. Maureen maybe has to weigh in on that. So then I think also this thing about weekly versus monthly, when we went to 3 council members, that means that 2 council members cannot talk to each other unless they're in public. And that means in a public meeting. So you've got 2 weeks, you've got, if it's every 2 weeks, then you have a 2-week gap when 2 council members cannot talk to each other. None of them could communicate with each other. And I think that if that puts a big weight on them, or a big concrete block on their ankles, what are they going to do in terms of developing a position that would be discussed at that bi-monthly meeting? I think 3 versus 5 is also an issue that I think we should have, if we don't already, on our agenda. And I think that plays into whether it's a weekly or bi-monthly meeting structure.
Okay.
So that's a lot. I'm sorry to throw it all out at one time.
Okay, we have 7 minutes left. Are we comfortable going over a little bit, or do we want to just cut it off at 8 o'clock at night tonight? There's a couple more issues on just the branches area, and I think it'd be, if we could get done with the branches area of our list, that'd be great to do. But if we need to stop off at 8, we can do that. Sharon, did I see you have your hand up?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify. It's not, David, you would prefer to have a 5-person county council?
No, not necessarily. I just think Jane and I think both at one of the very beginning meetings, both said we should take a look at the results of the changes that were made 10 years ago and see if they delivered the anticipated benefits. And so I just brought it up in that context. Did it deliver what was expected when we went from 3 to 5? Did it work or not? I'm not.
We went from 3 to 6, right?
No, we went from 6 to 5 at one time, and we went from 5 to 3 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just.
No, we had 6.
You have it backward, Dave.
Okay, well, whatever. We put ourselves in a position today where council members cannot talk to each other unless it's a public meeting. They're hamstrung.
Sharon, do you have something more to say?
Yeah, I just want to say, maybe that's what we need to be looking at. Maybe we need to change that rule.
Okay. Jane?
Yeah, sorry, I just have to be really clear on why I or the context in which I put that issue on the table in that previous commission meeting. Because David, I don't want you to misunderstand what I was saying there. I'll put my cards on the table and now and say that I absolutely, based on the consultations I had with people in my district prior to even running as a commissioner, like putting my name in the hat as a commissioner, I was of the view that 3 is where we're at and where we should be going forward, and do not support any change to that whatsoever. All I was saying in the context of that previous meeting was that, if issues came up that were looked at last time that we think perhaps should be revisited, okay, from my perspective, and I wasn't clear with this in our full commission meeting because I didn't think it was appropriate. From my perspective, as a representative of this district, and I can probably speak for Liz and Bob as well, and our constituents, we have no interest in changing the number from 3 to anything else. So I'm putting that on the table now. That's my firm position on this issue. So I'm sorry, I just feel I need to put that on the table.
Janet, did you have your hand up?
I was going to support what Jane said. I don't think we need to go backwards on this issue. This is an issue that if we relitigate this, it is going to completely take over any other amendment we put on. So I would support what Jane has to say. I think we have so looked at this. We went through an entire election about this. I think the people spoken. I don't feel like people are with pitchforks saying we need to go back to a bigger. So I would support what Jane has to say.
Okay. Tony.
I think the 3 versus 5, I think that just basically that ship has sailed, because 5, this doesn't work. There's no way to configure the county so that there are 5 equal districts. But I think the 3 seems like it works. We have an election for the whole county based on people that are coming from their specific district, selected by those districts. So I think that I don't think we should spend any more time on that. Going back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago about putting restrictions on the county council in their meetings, I think if we decide to do that, we have a couple of maybe 3 sections that have to be modified, and I would recommend that if we do that, then that becomes an amendment to the charter, not a suggestion. So that's all I wanted to say, is that the conversation that I heard a few minutes ago it looked to me like it was leading towards an amendment. So let's keep that in mind.
Okay. Any other comments? Jane. Oh, okay. So
vis-a-vis the 1 meeting, 2 meetings, whatever, 3 meetings, because there are a couple sections that tell us that the county council is responsible for their own meeting and their own way of doing things, and so on and so forth. So if we have to modify that, that's an amendment.
Right. And is that something we are interested in looking at, or do we want to just make a recommendation? Would we want to be making a recommendation that they go meet weekly? David?
I think we asked the county council what their current procedure is before we make any decision on that issue. And also, Jane, I completely understand what you said. I did not say that you said that we should go to 5. I just said we should bring up the issue and talk about it. And I hear what everybody is saying. I said I'm agnostic. I think there's some disadvantages, the advantages to each of them, but I think it's fine to move on. I will put in the minutes that we decided that was a non-issue we're not going to pursue. Where did we end up with the strengths and weaknesses, that issue? Is that something we're not gonna look into? There's nothing there to and I don't even know how to describe it in the minutes. I don't know what it means. Yeah. What Maureen means by that.
I mean, the 2 are strengths and weaknesses, and I think that the number is they're kind of similar related. I tend to think there are kind of issues that are important. That the original resolution to create the home rule charter was dealing with the issue of districting, and so and I've always thought that 3 was not enough representation. That is difficult for the Open Meetings Act, but just for my cards on the table, I think it would be interesting to look at. But if the committee is not interested in doing that, I'm happy to go along with that. Olivia, please.
So I also agree that we're at a place where 3 commissioners is enough, but I think it's also something that we really need to consider 10 years from now when the next charter group is looking at this. We need to think about the growth pattern of our county. So for example, I'll bring up Shaw Island again. They have seen their population double just in 1 year. And that's insider information, never mind. There are different groups that are thinking about ways to expand Shaw Island. How are we going to include them once they are big enough to have their own commissioner? So that is something that we do need to consider for the future. Sure, that's going to be in 10 years. Maybe I'll be a part of this process again, where we really need to think about the districting. But that is something to consider, that our outer islands are growing. And the long term for that.
Okay. It is 8 o'clock, so if we're going to be going over a little bit, can I get okay with everybody? Okay. Jane, you have a comment, and then Richard.
Yeah, I think Janet had her hand up as well.
Oh, Janet, okay.
And I'm okay with going over. I am going to say, though, we need to establish a hard limit, just because I am really getting exhausted by all the Zoom calls, because I have Zoom calls for work as well. Some of us have working lives during the day, and so I just can't. I've got limitations. So maybe we can agree on a hard 8:15 or something like that. But yeah, so that would be my request. But just, I hear what Olivia is saying, and I'm inclined to agree, because we are responsible for casting forward in our thinking around this. And we are all experiencing, I think, on these islands, an increased full-time resident population and construction of residential housing during the last year plus as a result of COVID. I see it in our teeny little neighborhood where I live. I think, though, that in looking in, I think we could do well to ask the previous, i.e. Rick Hughes and Bill Watson and current Jamie Stevens, their perspective on this issue, given how live it's been for the last year plus, as to, needs of Shaw. I mean, Shaw falls within Jamie Stevens' jurisdiction. I think it would be very prudent to discuss that with him, and what constituents from that area have said. Decatur may have issues as well, which is also part of Jamie Stevens' constituency. So I think we really need to refer to them on this and get some insight.
Okay. Janet, and then Richard. I'm sorry, Richard.
I was just going to say that maybe we move this on get the information, but as a recommendation, that at this point, we do not see, and I'll do deference to Dave and but it sounds like I don't hear a huge upswing of we need to increase this. At this point, we do not see a reason to increase this from 3 to another number. However, with the growing, and make a recommendation that this is something that not only should be kept in the purview and the eyes of the current council going forward, but also current CRCs, that they really need to circle back on this and look at the growing trends of populations as it develops over the next 10 years. That would be it would be a recommendation more than an amendment.
Great, thank you. Richard, do you have something more? Yes, please. Richard.
Yeah, I wanted to say, number one, that I am completely opposed to changing from 3, just to pile on, Dave, so that you know that you're completely outnumbered. Okay. And then Olivia, you correct me if I'm wrong, but if Shaw's population has doubled, I think that puts them at about 200, maybe 250. And I'll probably get hate mail for saying 400. Okay, still, it's a very small population, and I really don't have any sympathy at this point for saying the small islands should be considered in the context we're talking about. They're part of a district. And if in fact, before the next 10 years are up, if in fact there was a huge change in population that justified looking at that, initiative can be used for that. And that would be the way to deal with it before the 10 years is up for the next charter review. And I will say, having been kind of involved in this the last time when we did the 6 and there was talk of 5, the talk of 5 meant the only way you could realistically do it. And I would say, Jane, this is the reason you're hearing such a resounding opposition on Lopez. The only way practically to do it was it meant that Lopez would be combined with the south end of San Juan Island to form one district. Right. And Lopez was adamantly opposed, and the south end of San Juan was adamantly opposed. And I'm absolutely of the opinion we went through it. It didn't work. In my opinion, the 6 was a fiasco. Just let's not even go there.
Yeah. You do not want hate mail from Shaw Island. Trust me. I lived there for a couple of years. That's something you do not want, hate mail from Shaw Island. Trust me, Richard. David.
Trust me, I was the planning director. I know about hate mail from Shaw.
Sure, right. Yeah. David, please.
I still think it's worth asking previous council members, including Rick Hughes, if moving from 5 to 3 was effective? Or did it create any barriers to the effective execution of the responsibilities of the county council? I do not have a position on it, although I have concern about the ability of council members to meet between meetings and discuss things, which they can't with 3 and they can with 5. But I have never talked to a council member personally to ask him or her if that had an effect on their ability to legislate and manage. So I would suggest that we don't take this off the table, but we have a conversation with a council member who can set the record straight. Yeah, this worked, or no, this didn't work.
Okay. Great. I'd like to have 5 minutes to
Could
yes,
I have a determination if we're going to do that or not? I do the minutes and I want to be able to put in there if we're going to do that or not do that.
let's have everybody say what their thoughts right now. I do want to have 5 minutes available for just new business and comments of how we should go forward. And I have, let's see, Tony, Olivia, and then Sharon, please.
Just for the record, I don't think going to 5 is a good conversation, because that's going to be a major ask to the public. And numerically, 5 just does not work. 6 numerically worked, but as a function did not work as a government. So why even waste any more time discussing this? Let's just go with 3 and call it good. I don't think there's a problem with it the way it is. Lopez seems to be okay with it because they're the smallest district. San Juan and Orcas seem to be okay with it. Let's just not even waste any more time discussing 3, 5, or 6. We have a lot of different things that we have to deal with.
Okay, great. Thank you. Olivia?
I was going to say I could shoot Rick Hughes an email and ask him for his opinion, and then I can share with the group next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sharon?
My feeling is if we're going to ask one former county council member, we should ask a number of former county council members, not just one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Richard, please.
I am going to move that we do not spend any more time on this, and I am going to move that we do not ask any former or present council members about it, that we drop it. So put that motion on the floor and let's see what happens.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Tony, you second it? So now we open up for discussion. Is that correct? Is there discussion about this?
Just a point of order. Just a
Dave,
point of
Tony.
order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Dick, would you mind changing your motion a bit? Just only include one item as opposed to 2 items. Just the one that says we're not dealing with it anymore and call it good.
Well, the motion can include more than 2 items, and I would like to be clear, I don't even want to pursue it with former or present county council members.
I get it.
Okay. Is there, so that motion, Dick's motion stands. Is there any conversation or any discussion about this? David?
I'm sorry to say this, Dick Grout, a good friend of mine, but I don't want to put my head in the sand on this issue. I think the more information we have, the better decisions we're going to make. And if this motion is approved, fine. I'm going to contact Jamie Stevens. Olivia already said she's going to contact Rick Hughes. I'm going to make that contact personally. So I'm going to vote no on it, but to me, it's kind of a moot point because I'm going to investigate it myself. Thank you.
Yeah. Jane and then Janet.
After saying we need to have a hard stop at 8:15, this is a hot issue. I understand this. I'm going to say if people on this committee are going to start reaching out to current and former counselors, I think we need to be clear if they're acting for this commission in doing that, and what kinds of questions they're going to be exploring. We better be damn sure what we're exploring before we start stirring this pot. Okay, so this is a very hot issue.
Yes.
I think we need to rein this in and be clear. If people want to reach out to council members, former or current, on behalf of this subcommittee, or even personally, let's be clear what we're looking into. Thank you.
Janet, please.
So what I was going to say is, I think this is beyond this committee. I think this is something that if we were to make a recommendation one way or the other definitively and bring it to the entire commission, they're going to want to be engaged in this. So my feeling is, quite frankly, that we could not come to the consensus, and I don't know how we can vote on it because there's a motion on the table. But quite frankly, this is something that I think the commission needs to in its entirety, because this is a big deal. I mean, this is a big deal. And quite frankly, no matter what decision we made, they would want to weigh in on it. So I think going back to the commission, and then at that point, as an entire commission, bringing in people, and Kevin should invite them to bring them in and have a big conversation about this, probably as an entire meeting. But that's my feeling, that it's hard for us to make a decision, that I would just, no matter what we do, they're going to want to.
Yeah, Richard, please.
Can I just clarify? Making a motion in this committee doesn't prevent the full CRC from acting on this. We have to report to them what we did, and they can say, a majority of them can say, no, we want to talk about that. But I just wanted to end the conversation here because I think it's a waste of our time. And in fact, I don't know, never mind, I don't want to complicate this. But I really do think that Olivia and David, if you're going to go ahead and do that, you need to be very clear that you are doing it personally for yourself, that you're not doing it for the CRC if we pass this motion.
I feel exactly the same way. Thank you.
Okay. Olivia?
If the motion goes through where we're tabling this, I'm not going to stir the hornet's nest personally, to be very clear.
Okay.
So only if we vote to do that I will be contacting Rick.
Okay, so you're not going to be contacting Rick at this point about this issue.
Well, we haven't voted,
Okay,
so I don't know right now.
Okay.
Maybe, maybe not.
And Sharon, are you with us here? You have something to say? I don't see you here. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Sorry, don't mean to.
Call for the.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather also table this issue. I have no desire to have anything at this point other than a 3-person council, and that's where I am.
Okay. So there's a motion made, it's been seconded, and we've had conversation. Is there any other discussion about this? Okay. All those in favor of, is it tabling this issue indefinitely? Is the motion?
No, that's not the motion.
Okay.
The motion is to
no,
talk about
no.
it. There's no tabling here. The motion is to end the discussion.
End the discussion. Okay. All those in favor of ending discussion on this issue?
Is that the motion, Dick?
What is the motion, Dick?
No, the motion was that we dropped this. I'm sorry, I'm tired. I had a horrible night's sleep last night. The motion was that we just drop this issue, not discuss it anymore. And Tony, help me. What was the second point that you asked me if I would eliminate?
That we will not allow the access or seeking out other former or present council members to talk to us.
Yes, and that we will not contact other electeds or other people on behalf of the CRC.
Correct.
That's the motion.
Okay, on behalf of the CRC, because I do worry there's some First Amendment concerns there, but okay.
Because just tabling means the discussion continues at some other point.
Okay.
But Dick's motion is that we're done.
Right, and I'm not tabling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're done with it.
Okay. All
That's
those in
my
favor.
motion.
All those in favor of the motion on the table, raise your hand. Let's call the question. We have Sharon, Richard, Janet, Tony, Jane, and that's it. Okay. Let's see. And all those opposed to the motion, raise your hand. Oh, okay. All those abstained? Okay. There she, okay. So David, Dave are opposed. Everybody else is
Well, you don't have to name who is opposed. It's
Okay.
5-2-1.
5-1. Okay.
5, 2, and 1.
5, 2, and 1. Okay. Yeah.
There was one abstention?
Yeah,
Yes.
Olivia.
Abstention.
So Dave, that's an important thing to report out next week and just say, should the CRC as a full commission want to take this up? It's now up to Kevin to lead that
Okay.
conversation and invite who he wants into this conversation. So,
Okay.
but our recommendation is to not do this.
And,
Okay.
and I would add, and because Tony was so good about this today in our elections committee meeting, but you may, Dave, you may want to ask Dick to just put some wording for that motion so that we're all clear what the wording of that motion is. I did that for our elections committee, just because we were having trouble in the moment getting the right wording on what we wanted to make a motion on. So after the meeting, I just gave the wording for the record, so to speak. And so maybe, I don't know if we could ask Dick to just give the
I'll
wording
be-
for clarity.
I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, after the night's sleep, hopefully. Great. So
Yes.
there was,
I'm not
Is-
doing it tonight.
yeah. Is there a, oops, lost it. Is there a, okay, I was hoping to ask for some new business. We did cover most of the things dealing with branches of government, which I'm really thankful. Gosh, my computer's falling apart. It was great. I thought we had a really productive evening tonight, and it was a lot of intense and healthy conversation. Is there any new business that we'd like to bring up?
No,
Anything else? Think about. Okay.
not at 8:20.
Yeah.
We're
David.
not done with our old business.
Never
I-
opposed this, yeah. We did
I
what-
move we adjourn. I move we adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second? Or
Second,
Is
second,
there a seventh on that?
Third,
Yes.
third.
Third.
fourth, fifth.
All those in favor of adjourning? Raise your hand.
Aye.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Great meeting.
This was
Thank
good.
you,
Meeting. I really
everybody.
appreciate all your
Well
support
done,
and
Dave.
service.
Good job.
We'll be in
Thank you,
touch.
Dave.
Okay. Good night.
Night.